that like to get together, so rather than go to people's house. So Papa built this place
Uh-huh.
near the building where the we lived in the back of the place. We had a little we had a few little grocery store like and a sandwich shop in there, and we lived in the back. It was a pretty good sized place, and my sister and brother-in-law, we all lived together, and my brother-in-law worked in town. He was a plasterer, and he was working regular, and Papa ran the place, and then twice a week we had these dances, and then anybody could come, but they were very nice affairs, and
Did you have a local band?
yeah,
Just
they had the musicians come and they played for part of the admission. See? So.
How did you like working as a clerk in the department store in comparison, say, to working in the cotton mill?
Well, the pay was about the same. I certainly liked it. It was in a way nicer work than the mill. Of course, it wasn't any easier in one term because you had to clean up. You had to clean up every night after you left work. Let me go to the restroom.
You were talking about working behind the candy counter?
Yeah. So I remember we had to go into work at 8 o'clock. Then the store opened at 8. Closed at 6. We had a half an hour to eat. Except Saturday, Friday, and Saturday night we stayed open until 9. You had to work. You didn't, you worked from 8 till 9 at night. Plus, you had to clean up after you got through. You had to clean up, sweep behind the counter, clean up everything, replenish, and you had cleaning jobs to do all during the week too, as customers were scarce. And you had, if you took any bad money, and you had to make it up. I remember a woman one time came in, and the candy counter was just as in at the door. And she stood right at the end, and she gave me 2 Canadian dimes. And I didn't notice them. I took it out of my pay for taking those 2 Canadian dimes.
So how did you start working for Selma Manufacturing?
Well, that's when my dad and brother-in-law moved out there and started this little store and sandwich shop and dance hall, if you want to call it that. And that was on that other side of town, way over, on the other side, off North Birmingham. In fact, the place we were was out from Tarrant, Alabama.
So you tell me why you decided to start working for Selma.
So I was out there, at first I didn't work. I helped Papa in the store and place. And so one day I just decided to go over and see if it was putting on any hands, and got me a job. And I guess that was about 1930, I imagine.
You were 18?
About 18, 19. And so I was working there when we started organizing.
What did you do there? What was your job?
I was spinning.
You were spinning?
Yeah, because they made the sugar bags, but I had to still do that. That's the only thing I knew to do, and I had to still do that because you had to tell them your experience to get a job, and I didn't have a chance to do anything else.
What about the wages?
I can't remember what I made when I first went there. It must have been about $4 or $5 a week. I remember there a time right after I went to work there in the winter. They didn't pay us all in money. I guess I was making, as I remember it, I was making $6 a week. And they gave me $3 and $3 in script to spend at the A&P store. because they couldn't pay us all. Just before, in the height of the Depression,
Mhm.
there, just before Roosevelt was elected. And I guess I was making about. Then later, though, I was making $5.10 a week because Joe came over to me one night. He had some black work running. I don't know what they had, some experiment or something, but they had some black, and you couldn't hardly see it at night. And he had told me if I'd go over there, he couldn't get nobody to stay over there. He had told me if I'd go over there and run that black work, that he'd help me out and he'd give me $2 a week more. So when payday came, I still had $5.10. Now I was working 60 hours a night. So I went to him and said, "Where's my $2 raise?" And he said, "What?" And I said, "You promised me $2 if I'd stay over there on that black work." And he said, "Did I?" I said, "You know you did." "Well, I don't know how I'm going to fix it." And I said, "Well, I'm expecting it." So I got $2 a week more for that. And I was making $7.10 a week for 60 hours when the first minimum wage law under the NRA,
Oh,
$12 a week for 40 hours.
right.
So that's what I was
Did
making.
your wages go up from the minimum wage law?
$12 a week
They
for
did?
40 hours.
Uh-huh,
So I worked the second shift then,
uh-huh,
and they put on a third shift.
uh-huh.
See,
What were working conditions like there in comparison to your first job at White Mill?
terrible.
Worse?
Yes, because the company wasn't as good a company. They didn't keep their places clean.
Uh-huh.
But as far as I never had no trouble with supervision. I have to say that. I just didn't have any trouble per se with any personal clashes with the bosses, with my immediate supervisor.
Your supervisor there was very helpful to you.
Yeah,
Why was that?
I don't know. He just took a liking to me or some way or another, and I never missed any time from work, and I was never late. You couldn't miss it. I couldn't miss no time. Some people did lay out. How they did it, I don't know. But I never lost a day from work. I had to be there because I needed to work. You didn't work, you didn't get paid. So I had to be there. I needed the money, what little I got. So I never lost any time from work. And
Did he treat you better than he did the other women, or?
Well, he was a pretty nice fellow to everybody, but I would say that he did by the fact that giving me the $2 a week more, which he had to finagle, fix it somewhere or another, because they never would have allowed it. I would say yes. I know when we started organizing, he came down and said, "I understand they're trying to organize a union." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I understand you're on the organizing committee." I said, "That's right." And he said, "Well, I just want to know why." He said, "Haven't I always been good to you?" I said, "Well, you've done all for me you can." I said, "My dad always told me if I wanted to drink of water, go to Hill Springs." And I said, "I want to get to the man over you." And he just laughed and walked off, And so he never, in our department, he never tried to interfere. That's all he ever said to me about my union activity, except he came back one day, and there's a couple of black women that worked there, and they made less than we did. They paid them less.
They did the same work?
And he laughed one day at me and said, "Hey, go get Rosa in the union?" I said, "Yeah, she'll join." It's one of the black women. And he said, "You're going to call her sister?" I said, "Sure, I'm going to call her sister. I work here with her, don't I?" And he just went on. That was the only thing he ever said to me.
Did you think of him as a friend of yours, or was it that kind of?
Well, not really friend, but I'd say this, that he seemed to have a little more respect for me than he did the other people, and he'd come down and chat with me. I read all the time, and on the streetcar I had books, bring back and forth with me to read on the car, because I had about an hour to spend on the streetcar, coming and going to work. And he used to come down at night and pick up my book and read it while I was working and bring it back to me just before I'd leave. Whatever I was reading, he'd come down and pick my book up and read it while I was working, and he'd bring it back just before quitting time for me to have back. And then, too, I always I'm not saying this boastfully. I always changed clothes. I never did wear on the streetcar what I worked in.
Hmm.
And
You mean after you would get to work, you would change
yeah.
clothes and then change clothes again?
Yeah. He,
Why was that?
well,
Did you
because
get
I didn't
dirty?
like to go on the streetcar like I.
What
and-
kind of clothes would you wear to work in? Did
Well,
you get dirty or?
Well, you get lint, and you
Mhm.
sweat, you hot,
Mm.
and sweat,
Mm.
and I just didn't feel like getting on a streetcar with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, too, I didn't much want people to know that I was working in
Mhm.
that type of place. I
Mhm.
don't know why, but anyhow, I just did that. I
But were
changed
there
clothes.
certain kind of clothes that people wore in the cotton mill that were distinctive, so you could tell?
Well, just
if you
cotton
saw-
dresses, yeah.
Mhm.
We all had to wear aprons
Mhm.
to put our waist in.
Mhm.
But he had, there's a few lockers back there in the corner,
Mhm.
and he let me have one of those to keep my clothes in.
Mhm.
And I guess I was the only one that changed.
Mhm. Had he been a worker himself? Cotton. He worked on the floor before he became a supervisor.
I don't know. He'd worked somewhere else before he came there
Mhm.
in that type of work.
Mhm.
He had to be to learn it,
Mhm.
because you had to know what you were doing.
Did you get any better at spinning?
No,
You were still weren't any good at it,
no,
and you still
I
hated
didn't
it?
like it. I was better than this friend of mine, though. I was a lot better than she was. Ruth Stedham, she was a good friend of mine I got acquainted with in there. I was a lot better than her, though. I could do, because she was miserable. Me and her, neither one were no good
Mhm.
at it.
Mhm.
And she later quit there and went to work for Chris and retired. She was a good bit older than me. She was older than my sister. But Ruth's way up in years.
So, you were working there when the 34 general strike came along. Can you tell me something about how you began to organize a union there? Who
Well, for a
really
long
started
time,
it?
they didn't want me to know it. They was afraid of me. Because I never associated with the people. I lived in another part of town.
Uh-huh.
I had to travel by streetcar. And I never had any encounter with any of the people in the plant.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't know any of them. You just have to see them at work. And you never had time to talk. Like I said, you worked 12 hours, and you quit work, and you went home. I never on the weekends. I never saw any of them because I was on one side of town and they was on the other. And
There was already a local there.
no, I'm trying to think there just a minute. Anyway, I did not know it was started
I see.
until what we call section hands. He came to me one night. Said, "Did you know they're having a union meeting Saturday?" And I said, now he was like a straw boss.
Mhm.
He was eligible to join the union, but he was borderline supervision and worker.
Mhm.
Now he had a experience one time. He was from up around Decatur, Alabama, where right after in the 20s they had a strike, and that railroad yard moved, and the people blamed the union with it, and he had worked in there. So he was kind of against unions because of that experience. So he says, we ought to go and see what's going on. So I went, not for the reason he did,
Mhm.
but because I was a union. I didn't tell him because I didn't trust him.
Mhm.
So I went. That's when I found out, So when I went and talked favorable and talked, so they put me on the organizing committee. That's how I got on organizing. That's when I met Alice. Now she worked in the same mill,
Mhm.
but she was at the meeting too,
Mhm.
because somehow or other she had gotten in touch with the people who was organized. That's when I met Alice.
This was
Although she
Alice
worked,
Berry.
she worked in the same mill,
Mhm.
but I didn't know her.
Uh-huh.
So
Now, when you went to that first meeting, were these all people out of that mill, or was there
no,
an
without that
organizer there
mill,
from
that was the meeting for that mill.
But was there an organizer
That's
from
right.
the United Textile Workers
Yes,
Union
sir.
there?
John Dean and Albert Cox.
They were there at that meeting. And had they
They had
contacted
contacted
and
some
started
people.
that?
It had been going on, but I didn't know about it. They told me later they was afraid to approach me
I see.
because they didn't know how I felt. And of course, I reckon because my sister made clothes and her husband had a pretty good job. I was a little better dressed. I changed clothes. They were a little bit leery of me. They said they didn't know whether to let me know at the beginning or not. So I was put on the organizing committee. And this same woman that I helped train, she lived in a little place called Central Park, near where I lived in Inslee Highway. She lived in Central Park. And when we got to town, we transferred to the same streetcar to come out to the factory. And so one day I approached her. Told her we was organizing. I said, "You want to join?" I never will forget how she looked, Jackie. She forgot, she'd come to work in there and desperately needed a job. And in the meantime, WPA, her husband had a pretty good job in WPA, and he was making $75 a month, which is big money. He was some kind of a clerical worker. And I think he had some kind of job in the office in the steel mills, as I remember, because she came from the same section. He had worked in the steel mills, I think, in the office, clerical worker. But anyway, I talked to her, and I told her I was organizing. She said, I never forget, she said, she always wore, people back then wore hats. I didn't, but she always wore a hat back and forth to work. She says, well, she said, I may not work long. She said, I really don't have to work. And you know what I said to her? I said, hell, me neither. I could starve to death. Because I could remember, I didn't throw it up to her. She wouldn't have been there if me and this other girl hadn't helped her. But this show you how people, when they get on their feet a little bit, how they can change. And that's what I said to her. I said, hell, me neither. I could starve to death. I mean, it's either work or starve, And in her case, it's just about that, too. But that's how she reacted.
How many people did you have in the local union, in your local, before the strike?
Oh, yeah. Well, you see, we had to start paying. The minute you joined, you started paying dues. We paid $1 to join and 25 cents a week dues. And I was elected, when we set up the local, we had to have, I think, 25 people paying dues before we set the local up. I believe it was 25 to get a charter. And we set the local up, and I was elected secretary-treasurer. And we never had too many people pay dues. They just wouldn't pay. They didn't have it in the first place. But we acted just like a local. And
were these all women in this plant?
no, we had a good bit of men working. The dolphers are men. A lot of the weavers are men. All the section hands are men.
Who were the most active people in the local? Were they men or women?
Both. We had some very good active men who had been in unions before. We had one man who was section bad who'd been in the machinist union. He turned yellow on us in the strike, sold us out. Didn't sell us out, but and we had another a man who was very active, and he got chickened out on us too in the strike. His son didn't. Son stuck with us. And
who were the local officers?
I can't remember. A guy named Rogers was president. I can't remember his first name. And I can't remember any of the other officers right now except he.
Were you the only woman officer?
I can't remember. If I was the only woman, not. I don't think so. I believe Mabel Abson, a girl, was I believe she was an officer. Her and her brother, and then we had a Syrian girl and her brother that was very active. Worked in there. Can't you remember the boy and girl's name? They was very active in.
What were the grievances that you had? I mean, what motivated
Everything.
you to organize the local?
More money, better conditions, and certainly sanitation. it's everything. And the main thing, conditions of employment plus money. You use it to whim of the boss. You go up and say something. Yeah, if you don't like it, hit the street. That was the answer you got. Anything you wanted to say, you couldn't talk sensibly to the boss. He'd tell you, above Joe, out of the street, hit it. And if you don't like it, hit the street. That's the answer you got. To anything you asked. Because mostly you didn't ask because you knew what was going to be.
Right.
You had a beef, you didn't.
But how do you account for people at this point being willing to organize a union, try to do something about these conditions, whereas...
Had no place to go but up. Couldn't go back. Well, the only place you could go.
Were people aware of the NRA textile codes and
Well, all of
that
this
you were
hit.
supposed to be getting more than...
When Roosevelt took office, he practically had no opposition down south. Newspapers and everything. He was very quick to publish everything because everyone wanted the country back on its feet. So consequently, these people were expecting, their expectations, they were ready
They
to
thought
try to
that
do
Roosevelt
something.
was going to do something.
That people looked up to him and he was a dynamic person, as you very well know, and was loved by the average person. And they felt protected. They felt that now was the chance for them to do something for themselves. And a lot of people who had some union experiences before and failed. You must remember the mines had tried to organize in the 20s and failed. And out of that come some people who were still hoping someday to organize. They hadn't killed the labor movement when they lost and failed. There were still some people in all plants who were ready to take advantage of anything and to get the union.
People were aware of Section 8.
That's right. And people who were, in fact, we had, I know of 3 guys in our factory that had previous union experience. One was an electrician, and he worked as a journeyman electrician, and he was a union man, and these 2 guys had worked the railroad yards. And when they closed down, they had to move into something else. And they would come into work, they knew, machinists, millwrights, and they fixed they were called section hands. They were kindly over us, but they repaired the machines and kept the machines going and kept the work in order.
Were the most active people in the local the more skilled workers or the section?
In our case, yes.
Is that right?
The weavers, we looked to them because they were the ones who could control the thing. If you didn't have the weavers, and you didn't have the section hands. Section hands had to keep the machines, or the loom fixers. They were looked up to because they were skilled, and they couldn't be replaced easy.
Well, what about the more unskilled workers? Were they willing to come into the local?
Oh,
or were
yes.
they waiting?
We kind of looked up to those people. Section hands, the loom fixers, and the weavers, they were kind of looked up to. Anything they do, we felt like it was good for us, too, because they was already making more than we were. Precious little, but they were making more.
Well, what happened when the management found out that this local was organized or was being organized?
Well, they fired some people. Some people lost their jobs. Of course, after the strike,
Tell me about the events.
when the
that led
mills
up to the
went from
strike.
2 shifts to 3, when they went from 2 12-hour shifts to 3, there became a shortage of workers. And particularly in our, there was a big mill there, the Comer Mills. We had a big mill in Avondale, much bigger than this one where they made the material for the sugar bags. It was a much better run mill, bigger company, more powerful. The old man that owned this mill, that bought it out and started it up, came out of Mississippi. And his name was Ames, A-M-E-S. And when we started organizing, and he got wind of it, he shut the place down one night and called us all together and made a talk. And told us how he came and opened that place up, and people was needing jobs, and they was hungry, and he'd been losing money constantly. And I listened to this for a while, and I couldn't stand it no longer. And he was begging us not to quit and go over to the other mill and go to work. And some nights we couldn't start up the second shift. There wouldn't be enough people in there to start up. Because, as I say, they begin to compete for the labor. And he was begging us not to quit, to stay with him, because he'd operate the place more or less just for our benefit. So I said, "Hey, may I ask a question?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, if we all get a job somewhere else, then you won't have to be responsible to see that we got a paycheck. So it should be to your advantage if we can leave and go to work somewhere else." We come back upstairs, and Joe said, "Why in the name of God did you say that for? Why did you have to open your mouth?" I said, "I could not stand there and be made a fool of." I said, "How can a man stand up and think you're so stupid that he's running the place at a loss, yet he's begging us to stay and work?" I said, "It don't make sense." I could not stand it. They fired a little old woman that was she was a good bit older than me. I can't remember her name, but me and her became good friends. She was very active in the union. She was a weaver. They fired her, and they fired the president of the local, and eventually got me after I went to Washington. Yeah. I can't remember right now anymore, but some did get fired. That Syrian boy got fired. I can't remember his name. He got fired too. He got clipped right out. I think they thought nobody would stick to him. He'd be in that area. There wasn't too many Italians firing like they are over the steel area, you know.
Did the black women join the union?
Oh yes. We had about 7 or 8 black people work there at one job or another, and they joined.
Now, before you went out on strike, did you try to get your, did you take your grievances to the manager or try to get anything changed?
No.
There's no negotiations
No.
going on back and forth.
You couldn't know. They wouldn't recognize you. Wouldn't even talk to you. You know.
Did you try to send a delegation to talk to the boss?
Oh yeah, we had a committee. Yeah. And but we wouldn't have asked them to negotiate. We had a majority, but they just no. So see, there wasn't really nothing in that section that give you, and then that give you really any power. It wasn't very, wasn't much teeth in it.
So how did it come about that you went out on?
Well, you know, Frank Gorman, president of the United Textile, yeah, he got up and just called for general strike, and hell, everybody come out, non-union as well as union. I mean, people began to come out of the mills that weren't even there, or hadn't even got around to farming unions. This massive walkout.
Right. This is what I wanted to ask you. In July of '34, people in the mills in Alabama went out on strike before the strike was officially called in September by the United Textile Workers.
Huntsville, not all of Alabama, I don't think. Huntsville probably, because Huntsville was strongly organized, and their mills were owned by Northern New England, and they felt a little more secure and that they would get something. And they did get contracts in Huntsville.
Now, did you go out in July, or did you not go out?
I was out in July.
You all went out in July. Well, then that was before.
Yeah.
The strike was officially called.
I don't remember, but anyway, we went out because I remember we was out in the 4th of July, and in July we was out.
But how did that?
And then I went.
How did that? What I'm trying to understand is, during that, it was really the workers themselves in the local unions who went out on strike that forced the United Textile Workers.
I don't think so. I
wouldn't.
wouldn't say one way or the other because my memory isn't that good. But I do know that I don't know if we came out before the general strike or not in that particular place. I just can't remember.
Out in July.
Well, we were out. I know we were out.
How was that decision made to go out? Do you remember the day that you went out?
No, I don't. I just remember. Well, I was the second shift. The first shift struck, and then when we arrived there, see, It was already on.
Mhm.
So,
But you don't remember the local.
I don't remember the
local
action,
union
how it was
talking
taken.
about
It
it?
probably by, I just don't remember how the
Mhm.
decision was made to strike.
Mhm. Mhm.
It certainly seemed like we struck over them firing Jim Rogers. Seems like that's actually what triggered it, when they
Mhm.
fired the president. Seems like that's exactly what happened.
Mhm.
Because I remember that and this lady,
Mhm.
this little old lady, she's older than me.
Mhm. Did everybody in the plant go in?
Yeah, we sat down tight and doing it. Of course, we was in the mines. The mines was organized by that time. We had support of the miners. We had support of all the building trades. You know, we had a pretty good labor movement in Birmingham.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so we was tight. Nobody worked.
Mhm.
And we had a fence around the gate. They tried to scab, like I say, they
They
brought
did?
a truckload of strike breakers in there.
Mhm.
And this two guys that I tell you about helped recruit them, sold us out. Didn't sell us out, but they turned. And
They were scabbing?
they come in and tried to bring these scabs in, but
Oh.
they didn't get it. Didn't get through the gate.
How did you keep them out?
We got in the gate. They couldn't get in.
Mhm.
We had help.
From the miners?
Yeah, everybody, when we'd have trouble, we'd all go to help each other,
Mhm.
you know. And so most of our men had kind of chickened out on us. Most of us that were sticking was the women.
Is that right?
Most of the men in our department chickened out.
Where did they just, they didn't go back to work, but they just, what?
Tried to help break the strike. Recruited strike breakers. They came in from Georgia. They brought them in trucks.
Why did the
And they
men
come out with
chicken
police.
and not the women?
I just don't understand that unless they thought they was going to lose, which we did. We might not if they'd stuck with us. I understand this young fellow that I told you a while ago that stuck with us and his daddy, trying to think of his devilish name, that old guy. I can see him now. He was one of the fixers. I know when they came, his little kid was standing there. He was a young fellow. And he said, I can't hit my daddy. Some of y'all get him and I'll get somebody else. He told me that the company gave him $100 to help recruit them. $100 is a lot of money in them days. But
Did you have a picket line around them?
yeah, there's a fence. That's a good thing. I had a fence. They had to go in gates, and it was easier to take care of it.
Was there any violence, any fights?
Those strike breakers didn't want to fight, and of course they just didn't even get off the trucks. And these two guys that I'm telling you, they came up and tried to get us to get out of the way. No, there weren't actually no fights. They come up till we wouldn't move. So since the people who strike, they weren't really strike breakers. They were not trained strike breakers, or they just rushed us.
People.
They just recruited them for jobs, you know, to come to work. I don't know what they told them, but they knew a strike was on, but they weren't real strike breakers, the true sense of the word. Our strike breakers trained to break strikes and to fight it, and do whatever necessary to break the strike.
How did you live during that time that you were on strike?
Well, I was fixing to say, right after it struck, see, my sister, I was living with my sister, and all she had was what I was bringing in. So I had to go back, and I couldn't stay and continue to picket. I had to go back and stay at home. So I just come back now and then, you know, to help out with the union activity because we didn't have no money to live on. We didn't have no strike benefits. So I stayed as long as I could, but I had no income. I had no way even to get out to the picket line. I had no car fare. So I had to go and home and stay for most of the duration of the strike in order to have some place to live and eat.
Did people get federal relief? Or
No, I didn't know of no federal relief. I remember we used to go to stores and ask if they'd donate. Stores were pretty good. A lot of them was locally owned little stores, and they'd donate. Maybe we'd get a sack of flour here, and a piece of meat there, and some shortening here. We'd come back to the union hall and divide it up among the ones who the most needy. All I ever got was, I got $1 how my shoes half sold. That's the only thing I ever got. I never asked for anything. But as I say, I couldn't stay because I had no place to stay. And my sister lived away on the other side of town. Didn't even have a car. She couldn't furnish me a car fast. And her children were out with my mother and daddy.
Well, how did the company...
She'd gone to work selling cosmetics. She was selling cosmetics, trying to make a little money.
How did the managers react to the strike? What did they do? Did they come out and talk to you? Did they have armed guards out?
No. Just shut the gates and shut down the mill. Most of the bosses just left the mill. Except they had a watchman going, to watch it. But there was no activity at the mill. They didn't attempt to open it up, but except that one time. They brought that truck load. They couldn't run it with that truck, one truck load. They were on a flat-bedded truck standing up like a bunch of cattle. But they couldn't operate it with that.
So,
and the organizers, we was pretty up, see, there were one or two paid organizers in the state, and they couldn't supervise. We just more or less left pretty well to fend for ourselves the best we could. And they had to spend, of course, a lot of their time in Huntsville because they had more people out, and there's 3 big mills. Dallas, Merrimack, and Irwin mills were all out. And, of course, they got contracts there. And they were
did the... I was going to ask you whether the flying squadrons came...
Those flying squadrons were the ones who was going to them other mills that wasn't closed down.
Did you have any people that participated?
No, They tried to go down to some of the places that didn't. My place in Talladega, Alabama, they didn't come out. Talladega Cotton Factory, they called it. And there's a few places, that didn't. And they was trying to shut them down to make it more effective. I can't remember if the Alabama mills. There's a bunch of mills that started with the red wines out of North Georgia. I don't remember where they... No, they come along later. They opened them mills later.
Did you send any representatives to the UTW convention in September from your local?
Not no money.
How did the strike come to an end?
Well, just call it off. They just called it off because it was
How did people react when the United Textile Workers Union called off the strike? Did they feel like they had, that the union had given them as much support as they should have? Did they feel sold out at all when the strike was called off?
Some people, for instance, Jim got very disgruntled. Jim Rogers. He got very disgruntled. I know me and him had a physical fight.
You and him did?
One time in the Union Hall over fighting about the representatives, And he come to squabbling because they had really no true leadership. And Jim took to drinking a lot, and he caused a lot of confusion. And, we were not no physical fight. He just knocked me down. But this woman I started telling you about helped me a lot in the mill. He was drunk at the meeting, He was just making a mess of the meeting, and I went to ask him to please sit down, and I said, Jim, I went over to try to get him to sit down. He was just going on and on and on and on and on. There's somebody supposed he was trying to introduce this speaker, and he just kept going on and on and on and on. We had a guest speaker. We do that, try to have a little rally, different people come around and talk, more experienced union people. We was having a night meeting, and I went over and said, Jim, I was sitting there like mine. I got up, I said, Jim, why don't you go ahead and introduce me to him? And he turned on me, and this girl friend that I got, and she couldn't read and write. She'd always depend on me to tell her everything and read things to her. And she used to help me, the one that. So she got up and she told him, don't you jump on her. And she started fighting him. She was that type of person.
Mm-hmm.
And in the fracas, he knocked me down.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a mess, but that was...
So there wasn't, you didn't feel like there was good, strong leadership in the
No,
local
not enough
people?
good
Not
advice,
local.
not enough communication.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't nobody's fault. It was just bigger than they could handle. They weren't
Uh-huh.
prepared to handle something that big.
Uh-huh.
I remember that after we went back in the plant to work, why they made this one guy a boss, a straw boss, one of the guys that had sold us out. He come down after and started saying something to me one day, and I said, "Oh, you get away, you scab." I said, and he said, "Well, I ain't no scab, but I can't follow that Frank Gorman." I said, "Well, I don't have to follow Frank Gorman." I said, "If you're a union person, you don't pick out somebody and just follow them." I said, "You follow the union." But that's the only thing I ever heard, you know. But of course, he was trying to fix. He said he's still a union man. You know. He just turned because he tried to blame it on Frank Gorman, and we never had seen it.
Did you get any help from the State Federation of Labor? I mean, were they wholeheartedly behind this?
No, I mean no physical. They just weren't able to give any kind of physical or financial support.
So when the strike was called off and you went back to work, you yourself didn't have any feeling of disillusionment with the union?
No.
And
Some we tried and failed. Like the men and the people during the World War One. I'd seen it, they tried and failed. And you get a little stronger, even if you fail, you get a little stronger each time. That's the way I felt about it, because I'd seen what happened in World War One. Didn't disillusion me that we failed that time. Some people won. We wasn't a failure. We didn't win, but look at what we picked up. And look at the unions that are still in existence today from that. So there was gains made, although we may have lost. There was gains made out of that.
Did other people in your local feel that way? Optimistic and...
Yeah, later on, we had a union in that place where I worked. Later on, after I left there, later on they organized it, and somebody else bought it, and there was it was a union shop. Later on, yeah, they had a local union there, and Link Belt bought it, and they organized the union.
Did other union organizers and leaders come out of that local besides yourself? Or are you really the only one?
I'm the only one that lasted. Alice was on the staff first, but wasn't truly. Let's say that.
So when you went back to work, was there any? What was how are things different than they'd been before? You
in our department, no difference, because like I said, we hadn't had much problem. We had Joe as our overseer. He was over the department, and we had never had too much discrimination. Nothing. I wasn't no better or no worse.
But you kept on trying to negotiate a contract.
Yeah, we kept trying. Yeah, that's when Steve Nance entered the picture and said that we still tried to meet with the company. We tried to negotiate some of them people back to work, and we finally just give up. You know, I guess at the time the NRA was proved unconstitutional. We had nothing to go on. But we had several meetings, but just talked. You didn't get nowhere. With the Supreme Court made their ruling, declared the NRA unconstitutional, that ended any
well, tell
company
me
didn't have to sell them.
How you got involved with the Women's Trade Union League.
But see, I was delegate to the Central Labor Union. Now, Ms. Molly Dowd, during that time, had become active in the Textile Workers Union. Where she come from, I don't know. I never knew her, but I learned after I did get acquainted with her, she was a resident of Birmingham. And at one time worked for Love and Chose Loeb, big department store there. And had been active with a bunch of women in the Women's Trade Union League. And
you met her at the Birmingham Central Labor.
Yeah, well, after she began to work with the United Textile Workers too. I got acquainted with Miss Molly, and then after we lost, of course, we finally the people who were paying dues, and we just lost our local. And so I got, as long as I worked, But I worked at second shift. I couldn't attend no meetings of the Women's Trade Union.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember just when Miss Molly tried to set the chapter up. But then she was let go. Of course, the textile workers didn't have any money. She was let go from the Textile Workers Union, but she still was on the executive board of the National Women's Trade Union League. And we set up the chapter. Polly Brown worked at the Zitz department store. They didn't have no contract. She was a member of the retail clerks.
Mm-hmm.
And this Morris girl,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I told you. Ms. Louise O. Charlton was the lady judge there, and Miss Velma Smiley, she worked at the courthouse, some job at the courthouse. She joined. She was very active. And oh, good gracious, I can't think of that lady lawyer. Me and her got to be good friends. She didn't make much success as a lawyer, but she's a very good person. What was the name? And I thought of her name the other day.
How many members were
Cora. We never was a big chapter. We never were a very big chapter.
About how many you just had?